I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the August 14th, 2024 meeting for the Boise Public Library Board of Trustees. Carrie, can I get a roll call, please?
Kamal, Plenty, Lemons, here, Wisniewski,
Here.
Pantera,
Here.
3 board members present, Kamal and Plenty absent.
Okay, thank you. We don't have any communications today, so I would entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
Move approval of the minutes as presented.
Second. All in favor? Roll call, please.
Lemons,
Aye.
Wisniewski,
Aye.
Pantera,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Next up is the consent agenda. As a reminder, all matters on the consent agenda are considered routine and may be approved in a single motion. If any trustee wishes, they may ask that an item be removed to be considered separately. That said, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yeah, approval of the consent agenda is presented.
I second. Okay, can we get a roll call?
Lemons,
Aye.
Wisniewski,
Aye.
Pantera,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. And now we have reports. Is Zach from Friends on yet? We may have beat him to this. So we'll go ahead and hear from Camille from the foundation.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. A couple of updates from the foundation. First, we are pleased to report that our first ever bingo fundraiser was a success. It was well attended, and in the 2 hours that we were there, we raised just shy of $1,000. Next, later this month, we will be holding another fundraiser at BCAF, where we'll be selling the official t-shirts and posters for the event. So we're preparing for that and looking forward to the event. We also continue our work on several different operational projects, and our next meeting will be in September. That's all I have for this month. Any questions?
Thank you, Camille. That sounds really great about the bingo fundraiser and sounds fun. Yeah. Does anybody have questions for Camille? Okay. I still don't see Zach, so let's go to Jessica.
Okay. Thank you. First off, we talked about this last month. They were at the printers. So this month I have, you all have before you a welcome packet. This was work that was done by one of our strategic plans print teams that has put together materials that when someone gets their first library card, we're able to provide them with these so that they learn more about the programs and services. And we're also finding, particularly the general services one that has notes on the back. We're just using a lot of it to like write down a quick note, like, hey, how do you want to use Mango, or do a tip or a trick for Libby? So they're available at all of our locations now. Camille mentioned it. The Boise Comic Arts Festival is later this month. So it's our 12th annual. It will be Saturday from August 24th from 10 to 5, Sunday from noon to 5 at the Boise Center. Registration is now open for the portfolio reviews, for the gaming, and for the cosplay contests. This year new is the group cosplay contest, which I'm really looking forward to. I think that will be quite fun. And yes, we have brought back Muriel Farhan, which is one of the questions we get, the creative strawberry shortcake. So we're super excited about that. I wanted to show or call to your attention. I mentioned this in my director update, but we've got examples of them in front of you. These are the new expense reports that we'll be moving towards. We've got them. The handout that you have in front of you that says LB, which stands for library, LBAU roll up sum. This is the report that you're used to. And the report that we will be moving to is titled LB Revenue Expense Report. This should look familiar in how it's grouped because it's using the same information that how the budget is presented. If you look at the second page, though, this is where it has more information on capital projects. So I think it will help with think we had some previous questions where, wait, this just is really focused on general fund, it doesn't have capital, so better reporting on that for you. And then speaking of budget, if you have watched the council work session yesterday, council approved an interim budget change for the library, which was a one-time transfer of $19,000 for the Links Consortium. And since that was already pre-approved, we didn't need to bring it to the board, but I just wanted to make sure that if you happen to see that, that was what that was about. And then I wanted to give you a heads up that we are anticipating that we may be coming to the board maybe September or later in the year with a request for a potential closure for a day or two for the Collister location for some painting. We have part of the study rooms, the wall has deteriorated, and we aren't able to get it fixed overnight. It's one of those projects where we anticipate that we may need to request as minimal closure. We'll try to figure to like Friday or Saturday, but just because of the fact that it's paint and the fact that they need to have it cleared out and set, we may need to close that.
Good question about Hollister. How long is up this?
I believe the Collister lease is up. Do you have?
It's 2027.
Yeah, that's right. But we can, let me verify that and get back to you. Both leases.
I know one visit with someone's contemplation about whether or not this was the ideal location, considering landlords that it's like paintings, that's a lot of money, sort of tenant improvements if less stay.
Okay.
Observation.
Can we ask what the status of flooding how's that town? Hollister?
Hollister flooding.
Yeah.
Well,
You've had multiple?
we did have it, we actually, it's not in the August or July report, but we did have to close Collister also on August 1st for an afternoon because it did flood. That was a flood that was related to a clogged toilet. It was very minimal, but because it was wastewater, we did need to bring in a crew that is trained for biohazard cleanup. So that was why we needed to close it for the afternoon. I think you might be referring to the Hillcrest flood that was roof related. And your question?
Everything good?
Yeah.
So.
Oh my gosh, we had one downtown related to the roof repair as well, and that one also.
So
Yeah,
Everything good?
yeah, we're good on
I'm
this.
asking a lot of questions. So does the city self-insure?
The city self-insures.
Do you have a
I believe so, but I think it depends on the nature of the claim. But we can.
I just am curious whether it's like you start with the first $5,000.
Yeah. And it's always situational dependent. For instance, the leak that we had here, because it was construction related, it was covered by the company that was doing the roof. So. All right, last thing, your preview for September, in addition to it being your annual meeting, we're also really excited. We've asked the Learning Lab to join us to talk about the work that they do. They're a really phenomenal organization. And we anticipate at that point, we'll also be bringing to you an MOU with the Learning Lab that covers the work that they're doing at our Pole Houston. So Learning Lab has a space on the 4th floor here. During construction, they have moved out of that. So they haven't been, obviously, since they can't use that space, they haven't been paying rent to us. But that, and part of that is that they started doing some of their classes at Pole Houston. And while they're moving back into the 4th floor here, they also want to continue doing some of the classes out at Holistic. And since they do have hours where they're there before we're open to the public, we thought it was important to have an agreement on how we support them and how we work together. So that seems more of an MOU than since we don't have to be charging them for it. Since they're just using it as a classroom space, we thought it was appropriate. So look forward to that. They are really just a wonderful long-term partner for the library, and really excited for you to get to hear from them and how we work together, and some of the thinking that we're starting to do about potentially.
Questions for Jessica? Okay, I think Zach is here. We can circle back and hear your report. Zach?
I apologize. I joined as an attendee and not a panelist. So pretty short update today. The primary activity for the Friends right now is preparing for the September sale at the Hillcrest Library. So announcements or marketing for that is starting. And then the other activity that we're working on is moving out of the 4th floor to free up that space for conversion into administrative and office space for library staff. So for reasons I'm not sure I understand, when we moved to the warehouse, we left the Amazon room, workstations, and inventory on the 4th floor of the library. And so that will be relocated to space in our warehouse. Frankly, I view this as a positive because we've been missing that income stream that's anywhere between $3,000 and $5,000 a month. So that income stream should be added back and be available for funding requests moving forward. So that should be completed in the coming weeks. Jessica, I know I owe you a schedule on that. I'm waiting on a firmer schedule from the volunteers, but we have started moving the shelves, which will allow us to start moving the books this week.
Zach, I have a question. Can you explain a little bit about the Amazon sale? I'm not sure I understand. Amazon, right?
Sure. So there are certain books that are donated to us that are potentially of higher value. Maybe they're a historical book. Maybe it's a first edition of some sort. Maybe it's a textbook. Honestly, looking through the Amazon room, I didn't really see a clear pattern, but these are books that we can sell on Amazon. So we list them, they're purchased, and then we typically have about 48 hours to sell them or to ship them. So it is operationally intensive in that we have to have volunteers monitoring the Amazon store all week long. So there's going to be some work getting new volunteers set up and trained, but it's just another channel for us to sell books.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Zach. And if you could please again share with your board and your volunteers our appreciation for supporting the library and giving us back that space that will be used, I think, for construction really at first,
Yeah.
and then for library purposes. So that's really, I think, helps the library operation.
Absolutely. I will relay that. Thank you.
I just want to convey my thanks to both Camille and Zach for your support. We're engaging in some really successful conversations to deepen our connections and relationships between the Friends, the Foundation, and our own Board of Trustees. And I really appreciate their collaboration and partnership alongside us. And I'm really excited for some of the work we have coming up in this next year together.
All right, other questions for Zach? All right, thank you so much. Okay, next up, we've received our first request for reconsideration under the new Children's School, thank you, Jessica, Children's School and Library Protection Act. I did want to note a couple things. So you will now see, and Jessica, you can chime in if I misspeak, but every month this will be an ongoing agenda item, request for reconsideration. It will note either the request we've received by title, or if we received none that month, it will say that. So just a way that we can keep tracking these and be transparent of what we're looking at as a board. So you will see that the request we received was for Holy Bible New Living Translation. Just as a reminder, for the process we adopted, the first step, the library staff kind of takes a look and evaluates some things. So that has been done, and Jessica provided a memo. And I think you've all probably read it, but I wanted to point out a couple of things. One, this is not in our collection. We do not own a copy of this title. This requester is not a library card holder to the extent we could identify. And for these reasons, Jessica has recommended no further action on this request for reconsideration. I would wholly concur. I don't think something that is not our card holder, is not in our collection, we should not be using our public resources and time further evaluating that. So I would essentially just fully concur with Jessica's memo, and then our action, I think, would be to concur with this memo. I recommend this then would be, we would post this on our website, and then would note it in the minutes that we have concurred with the memo and recommend denial of this request. So we would need a motion on the minutes, but first I would like to open it up for any discussion or questions.
I'll just add the following policy when we had when this was submitted to us, we did post it to the library website. So you, if you go to the website, you see request for reconsideration. There's the title and the date it was submitted. There's the request for reconsideration form. There's also my memo to the board. It's posted there. And then following today's board meeting, we'll also post a link to the board meeting in that packet, because until the board meeting minutes are approved next month, that would be the only place that we could show the board's consideration. So that's a little bit more of the process.
Yeah, and I guess I would note also that this won't necessarily be the process in the future if something warrants like a letter or fuller consideration. It's just with this particular one, not having it and it not being a card holder, not sure if it's an actual individual person, but just given the name, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, we didn't do the next level of, we stopped the review at that as opposed to then actually looking for it. So I think that's a good point, that this is not, some of this is precedent setting in terms of adding this request for reconsideration to the agenda as a standing item. But each request will be treated individually.
I move that we take no further action.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, could we get a roll call, please?
Levens.
Aye.
Wisniewski.
Aye.
Antara.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, next up is policy review.
We are at the end of policy for this fiscal year. So September, we don't do our policy free. Couple of notes. We were finishing up section 3. You'll notice I did bring back a few from section 4 related to code of conduct, which we introduced a new version in March. So we've had some months working with it. And there was a tweak we wanted to make in the interim, and then we'll do a full review again next year. So that's why you're seeing that again. As far as section 3.0, the only recommendation we're making, and it's related to the Hollister flood, is for 3.06, the unscheduled closures. We realized the way we had left it.
Page 28.
Thank you. We had given the director discretion to close, but there was still a note about contacting the board president or the vice president within an hour before taking action on it. Something like a flood with hazardous materials, we needed to close immediately. So we changed the wording a little bit to go ahead and give the director that power to go ahead and close and then still make every effort to contact the board and fill them in. So that was the change on that we are suggesting. Any questions about that part?
I'll just make a quick comment just for benefit of others who don't get the call. I've gotten a few different ones, and there's just never a circumstance I can really envision where I'm in a position to kind of second guess what the staff is recommending doing. So the idea that this would then also potentially hold them up just doesn't make sense to me. I think it makes sense if there's some notification so we have awareness or anything unusual, but so I'm very supportive. I think this is a good change.
Oh, thank you. Well, and the example that Jessica gave, that there's future maintenance work, that's something that we know about far in advance. So, thank you. And then as far as code of conduct, the piece about service animals, we discovered we really needed to clarify. We were trying to state that yes, service animals are welcome in our buildings. It was unclear to some of our users that comfort animals, emotional support animals are not considered service animals under the ADA's definition. So we wanted to clarify that in the code of conduct language. So that's why that's.
It's just a regulation.
It's a regulation.
Oh, yeah, that's regulated. Nothing that you have to do about.
That's what I was looking to.
Yeah.
Is that
Sorry about that, yes.
Okay.
And we changed it in the code of conduct and then the expanded version of code of conduct. So the changes. That is all I have.
All right. Questions? No questions. I'd entertain a motion to.
Your turn.
If you look on the first page, it like. Carrie, I think very helpfully gives us some guidance.
I move to approve the recommended changes to policy 3.06, schedule closures and cancellation.
Second.
All in favor? We need a roll call? Yep.
Lemons,
Aye.
Wisniewski,
Aye.
Pantera,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carried.
Thank you.
With only three of you, you're very busy.
Okay, I think I'm next with the updated bylaws. Okay, so you'll recall, we brought these last month. This sort of was started with a request by Trustee Plenty, maybe a year ago with some changes and just looking to update the bylaws a little bit. So as noted last time, these have had input from Jessica and other library staff members, as well as city legal. And the changes made since last time I would characterize as mostly not really substantive, but more just kind of clarifying where things are and how things are worded in a few places. That said, does anyone have questions, comments, concerns on the updated bylaws? And I did speak with Brian since he's unable to be here, and he said he would vote for them if he were here. For what that's worth, since he's the one who sort of requested the changes, I thought it made sense to circle back with him. All right, if there's no questions or comments, I would entertain a motion to approve the bylaws.
I move to approve the recommended changes to the library board bylaws.
Second.
Second, can we get a roll call?
Lemons,
Aye.
Wisniewski,
Aye.
Pantera,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carried.
Thank you very much. Okay, and we have a follow-up from last month, I think some more information on library statistics.
So we'll have James come back, and then he will be joined today by Eliza Ruby, who is our information services manager. And we also know he's gonna, as you remember from last month, James will be showing you some really exciting graphs, but the screen can be hard to see. So in front of you, you also have a printed copy of slides that show. So I will kick us off and set the stage for this. we are picking up the discussion that was started last month. Could you move to the next slide? Really a little. So we're, as you know, just really excited. One of the things we were able to do with our strategic plan is make a case for data analysis. James has been just really helping us better make sense of our data, make sure it's accurate, and make sure we're able to use it to report to the board and to the community. So we're going to continue the work that we started last month. Just a reminder of sort of why we include statistics in the board packet, really how we're tracking usage of the library, how we can report on our strategic goals and objectives, how we're starting to identify changes or trends in library usage. And then we also obviously have a responsibility to gather information for the annual report to the Commission for Libraries. So we started this board packet statistic revision process, and really the goal was to get the statistics in place with what we're going to start sharing with you starting with FY25. So in July, we talked about in-person visits and circulation and some of the statistics we're going to add and remove. Today's discussion is really going to be on reference. And then the September meeting will conclude that work, and we're really going to talk about meetings and programs. And one of the things I want to talk about when we talk about reference, this is a piece that I think is really important, and for us is going to take a lot of work to refine. The previous last month when we talked about circulation and door counts, those are things that are all automated. So really, you're confident that that data is being collected in a standardized way, and when we present to you, we're presenting standardized data. Reference is the human interaction. This is where, when we're working with the public, we're collecting that data. It's also done by humans. And you will see that there is a human element in that. And so this is really a place where we are learning and have the opportunity to really start refining and improving how we are collecting data about our human interaction. And that I think is just to us so important, because those are when we're asking questions about, how do I find a job, or how do I'm looking for this resource, or sometimes like I'm just looking for this book to help me. So this is really, we need to capture this well, because this really helps us show impact. But we also, I think, have the most work to do in this area. So we'll start where we did last month. This is how we currently report on our engagement with the public. We talk about it as a reference summary. You can see the desks and the numbers all created by staff. And I think this is something that I can't remember any board discussion about this table. So when we have this will, I think, really start to be the beginning of when we start to talk about some of that. So here are the numbers that you get. They're just sort of rolled up. Eliza is going to talk a little bit about how we get those numbers and what they mean.
Yeah, so this is a screenshot of what we see in the public desk. It's a software called Gimlet. And so this is how we track everything, all of our interactions with the public. So across the top, you see type, which is curbside holds, directional, and reference. So curbside is anybody going out to get holds, the curbside holds to equal. Directional is more of the where's the bathroom, where are the 600s, where's the kids program happening, just kind of point people where they're going, quick interactions. And then reference is the how do I apply for a job online? How do I need readers advisory help for my children? The more in-depth questions that you see time with people. We track how long it is. So if it's a quick interaction, if it takes more of our time, if we're talking to people in person, on the phone, through email, and then what location we're at. So this is a screenshot of the downtown version of this. And so you see the circulation info services, so we know where building questions are getting asked. If it's an abnormal question, usually I use like a comment or complaint or anything like that. I'll type in the question and answer that I provide in that next little section right there. We don't use that as much just because it's a little time consuming. And then the tags, We are about to clean these up. So this is what it looks like right now. We're about to narrow these down to 4 or 5 tags that we really want to track. But we can just click on those so we know that the interaction we had, had to do with business and nonprofit or hospital sub 10 or any of those things. We can just click those really quickly, and then we know what the interaction was about. Our initials go in there so we know how many answering what, and then we just hit save, and it shows up. We see a couple of the options down here. So it'll just log everything that we're doing. So we track all of the pieces. Some of the data that we use with this, so like the business and nonprofit and the job help tags, those are really important for us because we pull those for the ULC business value calculator. So that's how we determine some of those interactions that they're asking for in that business value calculator that we do once a year. And as Jessica said, this is manual entry on our part. So we are working really hard to try and get everyone consistently using it the same way, and a bunch of stuff like that. So the next couple of months, I think we're going to really work on fine tuning this with our staff, making sure that we are all the managers are on the same page so that we can get all of our staff on the same page. And then hopefully our numbers will get a lot more in sync.
All right, so this is how that data gets entered, and James has started to take the data out of Gimlet and start to share it back with us so we can start to see sort of some of how we are using, like some of how that can be potentially reported to staff.
So this is the questions and information services by time of day for the past week. And it gives us a good idea of when the questions are being asked and how much time staff are spending on that.
This one has been helpful for me because I know when I need to make sure my desks are fully staffed. So I know in the morning we are busiest with everything. So I know 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, I need to have the staff available. Later in the evening, I don't need that.
And then we have question count by desk and location. So the downtown library has information services, youth services, and circulation. And the rest of the locations are just have a desk.
So just the blue downtown, that circulation, that's the desk that when you walk in on the first floor. The youth services, the sort of salmon color is the desk that's in the youth services area. And then information services, there are 2 desks, the desk on the second floor and the desk on.
Is this just when folks are approaching a desk? Because I'm sure that just as folks are shelving or working about the library, there's lots of interaction. So you're just tracking the ones where people are coming up.
Trying to track everything. So I know the pages trying to keep track, and then they'll come to us sometimes and ask us to put in a few for them, or they'll go do that shelving. And then if I'm just out wandering and I get asked a few questions on my way back, which happens a lot, I try.
And there's also on the tags, you can do it by email and by phone as well.
Yeah, so every phone call we get, we track in here and every through the public. So not our own personal, we're going back and forth, but any of the
What is the time frame for this? So,
This is the calendar year 24.
okay.
Slide.
This is also calendar year 24. It's the question type by location. So as Eliza mentioned, there's curbside hold pickups, directional and reference questions. So these are how those are broken down by each location. And this kind of shows some of the human error that could be involved.
we were fine tuning what directional versus
Yes.
Yeah.
So that exactly. So you can start to see on the bottom, the colon used to like the ratio of what's a reference versus a directional. And then also just sort of when we're looking at it, but based on the number of people coming in, we would think we would be able to see a certain percentage of interactions with the public. And so this is one of those ones where I think over time, as we're starting to share this with staff, we'll start to see some of it start to even out a little bit more, just because it does look a little, yeah, well, it's a little skewed. It's a good way to say it.
And then this is in the past week, question type by day of the week. So we can get an idea of which days are the busiest and getting the most questions.
This to me is another one I think is interesting in terms of the fact that the downtown location is the only one that's open on Sundays. And so it's interesting to see how much that stood out. And then also thinking about how our hours fit. We're open at all locations till 8 o'clock on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So we were curious, and this week, since it's only a week, it'd be interesting to sort of look at these week by week, because some people happen to go on that. But also just wanting to make sure that we're, to Eliza's point, we're thinking about how we're making sure we're staffing right.
So, we also used to count just number of people entering another screen.
Yep.
In terms of, this may give you a better sense of whether or not your hours should you even be open Sunday. It'd be better to add 2 hours to weekdays or be open longer on Mondays.
I think the counts, I think those are really important. I think until we have more confidence in the accuracy of the reference piece, it is a little harder to make decisions on hours based on it. I do think it's interesting that we see a real, like the library used to be open from 8 to 9 p.m. And it's really clear that we just have such a drop off that they're really in the earlier hour is so much more heavily used. So that I think where we're thinking about sort of the decision on hours and sort of when people are coming. I would prioritize.
Right. I'm not,
Yeah.
I was implying
Okay.
that one was the answer. I'm just suggesting that this data helps inform that question as well as whether you have the right staff manning the right places at the right times, or quantity of staff reference versus for group side.
It is interesting to think, is there some sort of ratio that we could, X percentage of, we know that if this many people come in the door, this many people will ask us a question or have a reference engagement. Because that I think would be interesting, if we could have some long-term data on that to sort of see that, because that I think could really help us plan. Hey, if our usage is going up 5% all the time, that we should plan for our reference going up correspondingly percentage as well.
And then the other sort of observation is that this speaks to the expertise of the individuals. I mean, there's even under reference, there are simple reference questions, and then there are things in which they're complex and the level of expertise and experience of the staff member. You need a different caliber of expertise to be able to answer it. How many of them are those simple questions of versus the really complex things that need a level of experience and expertise.
Do you have any thoughts on that? As the person who helps try to distinguish those?
Yeah, I think That's why we have so many tags right now on that tracking page. It's just, and it got a little out of control with that. And so we've had to really have a conversation about what do we actively need to track right now? And what, kind of going back to like the, ULC business calculator. We need to track certain ones because we know what we need, but I think even being able to look at directional versus reference, if somebody's just looking for a business databases for a business tutorial on how to use our business databases, that's a directional versus a reference, so that helps indicate that as well as the time. So if I spend half an hour teaching someone how to use one of our resources versus just getting logged onto a computer and type into it. So I think we can get some of that information.
Just funny because this conversation is literally the questions that we had teed up for you, particularly that second one. So one, is there anything missing that you'd like us to consider? And I think, Ron, you tying it more towards the, what is that level of engagement and how much staff time and expertise does it take? And then we are trying to think about how do we limit the tags. Right now, it's open, like anybody can create a tag for anything, which means we're not really able to synthesize some of the usage and make that case for it. So that's the other one. Sort of what we, thinking about community impact, what should we be capturing?
Well, that was the other thing I was gonna say, is that prior to the strategic planning, what are the kinds of services that the public wants? How much this also plays to how much we are meeting that need based on coming through these requests, some kinds of things they're asking.
I think a survey in the case would be useful. When we record the questions that are being asked, we do record them in the database, but it's really hard to get a count of a specific question, because if it's asked slightly different, you can't really put two and two together. So I think having like a survey where you could control for that would be actually useful.
Yeah, the only other thing that isn't captured here is like the number of interactions that are mentioned about communication. So things sort of beyond what I'll call the traditional things.
That is going to be one of the tags we limit down to, is how many times our staff is asked for mental health coordinator help. So anytime we refer somebody to our main mental health coordinator, anytime we're asked who they are, what they are, any of those, that is going to be one of our 4 or 5 tags that we put down to. Yeah, so that we can track that.
And I'd be happy to do a visualization on that, broken down by tag, so you can see mental health coordinator, et cetera. The reason why I didn't do it this time is there was hundreds of tags. It got to the point where it wasn't meaningful.
I have something I probably should know. What is reader's advisory?
That is when someone comes in and says, I need a book about fairies for my daughter or something. And so then you can.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard, because I just don't know the universe of everything that people are coming to ask necessarily. But I would echo what Ron says, is thinking about, is there stuff that would be helpful to pair back to the strategic plan? And I was kind of looking if there was kind of along those same lines, like general literacy type questions, like where we're helping. I don't know if that's something that comes up and that there would be a tag.
Interesting to think about how youth services uses. Services.
Yeah, I was just curious. And I don't even know what that would be, like helping a parent, or like what even would all be encompassed in something like that, but how I just know it's one of our goals. How are we helping CI
Well,
and being that resource, that's other than obviously writing books. So like really think about like kind of tying it back to strategic plan too, other than like the mental health coordinator and housing services and.
on the other one. So, shut to.
Yeah.
Should capture that information. So, this is now moving out beyond the specifics here, but just are we? So, so it's tricky to profile. Cautious approach it.
I think one of our tags, if I remember right, is going to be for we have a little pocket talk translator.
So
So one of the services we have this little, it's called a pocket talk. And so it's just a little, it looks like an old iPod basically that you talk into and it translates. And so we have a subscription for that through the city. And so one of our things is going to be asking how often, like we'll tag if we use that pocket talk. So it's not going to be all language services or all new American services or anything like that, but it will capture at least how much we're using that particular service. So that'll be a start to what you're talking about, but not, yeah, not all encompassing, but it'll be at least a little of that.
Seems like your sort of thing that would be good at.
Oh, data. I'm a big fan, especially hearing the tags. I do. Nice to know versus need to know, right? There's a
Right.
lot of nice to know, but I keep coming back to what do you need to know? I like tying it back intentionally to the strategic plan. And is there any other required reporting that you have? I think it's all fascinating. That's because I'm a library nerd. We all are, right? We all think this stuff. But I also am kind of astounded actually that you all record every single interaction. And I would want to remove any barrier to your staff of having to record data because it's just a lot to remember when you're shelving books, talking to somebody, and oh, I gotta go back and like, do they keep the thing in their pocket? Like, how do they remember to write all that down? That's a lot to capture. So even though I think it is all wildly fascinating, my guidance would be boil it down to as little as possible. You need your staff to collect and make a couple key tags and keep it simple. Because while it's super interesting to know, I also want to make sure that they're doing it and that it's accurate. So what do we need to know? And then the nice to know. Yeah.
It's hard.
It's hard.
All this happened before.
Yeah, of course. And what's understandable, because I'm even thinking in my brain the difference between the reference question and the directional question, and that would be hard to distinguish. And do you need to distinguish that? You probably do, and that's fine, but
It's. Yeah.
But I have a library. Why do you want to know about that? Correct. So we have talked a lot about what's. How does that go? So that is, it's a staff. It is a staff time kind of management thing, like we were going to like. Yeah, so I think I realize that too. Streamline it as much as possible. I'll still be. That makes sense. Yeah.
Great. Other questions? Thank you so much for, this is really interesting and it definitely, I'm impressed you're tracking that much.
oh my gosh, I know.
It's hard. Yeah. Okay, looks like we have no other new business. Selection of trustees for new vouchers. Is that really still me?
No.
Okay, so Ron,
Yeah. Just to say.
are you able to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then,
I'm gone for a few days.
next meeting is Wednesday, September 11th. It's Rebecca's birthday.
Spring.
Right.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, adjourned. Thank you.